You see, I believe that when we leave a place, part of it goes with us, and part of us remains. Go anywhere in the station when it is quiet, and just listen. After a while, you will hear the echoes of all our conversations, every thought and word we've exchanged. Long after we are gone, our voices will linger in these walls for as long as this place remains.
Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel if you've not been here before. I just had a subscriber today that said on the live stream that he didn't realise he wasn't subscribed. So check that you're subscribed if you're watching this now. But yeah, thank you to all the subscribers and to the people who comment and the people who become friends on here. It's really awesome. This is the May wrap up. So I'm going to, as normal, I'm going to talk about the videos I put up in May. I'm going to talk about the books I read in May. I'm going to talk about my Goodreads status. This month is slightly different. May is slightly different because it obviously ended, as you probably know, with a horrible bit of news. So I will mention it, but I did a video on it yesterday. I've declined a live stream about it tonight because I don't really feel strong enough to talk about it live. I can do this video again if it goes wrong, but yeah, I will mention that partly because the first video that I'd put up in May was actually another reminder about the fundraiser. So that was a load of music videos with a few messages from other booktubers, really just to tell Pax we were still thinking about her and to send her our love and to remind people about the fundraiser. So Adam, her partner, probably needs that money for dealing with the fallout of what's happened, but that was the first video that I put up anyway. So second video I put up was a video about me meeting MJ from Reading This Life in London. That was an amazing day. It really was fantastic, and it was so good to meet her, and yeah, we obviously got on really well, and it was just really awesome in so many ways. So there's a lovely video about that. It's a vlog, so it's like lots of different videos thrown together. And yeah, that was a really nice day. So that was the second video I put up in May. Then I put up a Horror Mayhem update. So I had in late April, I'd put up an announcement about Horror Mayhem, what I was going to read. So I put up a short video about what I'd been reading and what I'd changed, because I think I got one of the books in the meantime, so I'll talk about that. And then the first book review I put up was actually from Horror Mayhem. So Horror Mayhem was a month-long event where we concentrated on horror, and most of what I read, was it most of what I read? And my books. Yeah, most of what I read were horror books in May. And Tender is the Flesh was such a unique book that I wanted to do a special book review for it. So I did that. I did a short video where I talked about Apocalypse Meow because I've borrowed Apocalypse Meow from a friend. So I haven't actually read it yet, but it will be my first entry into manga once I've read it. But I couldn't resist it. So it's a like Mouse is, it's a version of recent history, 20th century history done through animals. So Apocalypse Meow will be mentioned soon, but hopefully I'll read it this month, June. So then I did a special video that was bouncing off when I saw Soul, a Pixar film. And it was kind of like one of those videos I've done. I do it now and again when I talk about the meaning of life. I'll talk about what makes us tick, and, you know, like sometimes they're mental health related. Getting the best out of life, which I think is what Soul's about. And I wanted to do a video and reference the film because I think it's quite an underrated film. So go see Soul if you haven't seen it. Really good Pixar film. Pixar are so good. And then I did a video which was my TBR for June on the Range. So we're getting towards the end of the month now. I do so many videos, I tell you. I used to aim to get like about 6 videos done when I first started doing BookTube, and now I do about 13 a month. But yeah, what was that? June on the Range TBR. So that was really talking about the Elmore Leonard books. Is probably most of what I'm going to read, to be fair. The Elmore Leonard collection. And then I did the wrap up for Horror Mayhem. So there is going to be some repetition here with the stuff I've read this month, because ultimately I'm not going to ignore the stuff I've read for Horror Mayhem. But I did read a lot of stuff actually last month, so it does cover other stuff as well. But yeah, the Horror Mayhem video was up, and I did it at that point because I was about to go on holiday. So I've come back from holiday now, so I knew I wouldn't be able to do it while I was on holiday. So that's partly why I did it. So I know that MJ wrote, "You've got loads of days left." I had about 5 days left or something, but it's all good. And then I did the Book Trek 2023 announcement, and stupid me wrote Trek Book 2023 in the title page. But yeah, Book Trek 2023. Yeah, it's a really nice event. I've already started my first Trek book actually for this month. So if you're a Star Trek fan, watch that video. You'll see me in a Star Trek uniform. And then I did a video which is my first video on the hard case crime novel. So I've been reading a little bit more crime now. I never used to read any crime. I've read a little bit more over the last sort of 18 months. And now I'm kind of concentrating on that series because I find them quite fascinating. And I've now, thanks to my birthday as well and my trip out on a holiday, I've now got 14 in the series. Well, I've got access to 14. 2 of them are actually from the library. But I own 12 now, and I've got 2 from the library. So I was going to do, like, I was thinking of maybe like picking 13 of them once I've read them and doing a video on, like, calling it the Unlucky 13 or something. But we'll see. We'll see how far we get with reading them. But, yeah, I do think it's a fascinating series of books. So I did a video on the hard case crime novels. Then I did the Rootin' Tootin' June on the Range tag, which got a bit intense at one point because it talks about alcohol. But if you want to watch that, that's cool. And then I did the Suspension of Disbelief one, which that was a reaction to Greg from another Bibliophile Reads. And basically it was me having a different take on it because he did a really good... He's talked about this in chats on Voxer and stuff as well, where he has got a limit as far as accepting plots and he often thinks that books go too far. And I was kind of saying that my approach to fiction is quite different, that I'm quite happy for it to go too far. So that, you know, that's essentially what I say in the video. But I do talk about Brecht at the beginning though, so if you want to watch that, there's a bit of Brecht in there. So those were the videos I did in May. Looking at the Goodreads status, I've read 33 books this year apparently, and my goal was 70. So it says on Goodreads that means I've got 4 books ahead of schedule, but that doesn't necessarily mean I'll be ahead of schedule, because one of them is going to be Dune. That's going to take me a while to read, so I'm going to read that later on in the year. And also I'm going to stop reading properly soon when I write my next book, so I might even get behind, so we'll see, but it's not a biggie. I only do the Goodreads thing just to track my reading. I don't do it to see it as a goal, as in something I must do, so I don't get stressed about it. But apparently 33 books I've read so far. So let's talk about that's my notes. I wouldn't have been able to remember all that. That's my notes. So let's talk about the books I read. So this was the first thing I read for Horror Mayhem, Tender as the Flesh. Really interesting book, and I liked it. I had a couple of issues with it, but I did like it. Check out the review if you want to know more. But that was the first one I read for Horror Mayhem. It's a disgusting book. But I also read some stories in these collections. So these are horror collections from local authors. They're from Portsmouth, and I've bought them from the authors themselves. And this is quite a short one, and this is slightly longer. And they're both good. That one was a little bit more visceral and kind of in your face, and I think I'm going to prefer that one, but definitely want to read all of both books. This was kind of like a story about possession with a twist, and then this was quite a gross kind of psycho thing about hair. But yeah, definitely want to read more of Rob's book. So I read some of that, so I need to read more to obviously complete the books. But the idea of Horror Mayhem is to read short stories as well. So Blood Sugar, as you see, it's one of the hard case crime books, but it's not really a crime book. So it was a little bit. I mean, I suppose it's more of a crime book than a horror book. I thought it was going to be a bit of a crossover, so I was linking it to Horror Mayhem, but it wasn't really. But it's still an interesting book, and I did like it. Yeah, I think it might take you a while to get used to the narrative voice because it's done in character, so that might be grating, or it might just take a while to get used to it. I read my first Graham Marston book. Again, that was for Horror Mayhem, The Red Hotel. I really enjoyed this. I whizzed through it. I really, really enjoyed it. So I'm definitely going to look out for more Graham Marston stuff. And this is clearly a character who's used a few times. I think there's 3 books in the Sissy Sawyer mystery series, I think. But yeah, a bit creepy, really well written, compelling. So Red Hotel, like that. Then I read another hard case crime book, which is The Hot Beat. Again, I enjoyed this. I wanted to read it because it's Robert Silverberg, and obviously Robert Silverberg is really famous as a science fiction author, but he did do some crime stuff when he was in his early years. This is really good. I really enjoyed it, but it's quite weird that now and again the writing stops to talk about in great detail the physical attributes of a female character in it. So that's a little bit of a cliche you get in a lot of fiction, and a lot of female booktubers especially talk about it on booktube. But it was just really odd. It didn't really fit with the way the rest of it was written, so it's just strange. But it didn't offend me, but it was a little bit odd, and it was done in a worse way than I've seen a lot of people do it. So sometimes, like for example, Baron Aronovich, his Rivers of London books, they're a bit like that, but it seems to fit the tone of the text better, and it flows better, which is a bit of a pun, I guess, with Rivers of London. But the Rivers of London series do a little bit of objectifying, but it seems to fit, and I don't think it leaps out of the page. This one, it really did. It was really odd. So, but I did enjoy it. And it's it's about a clarinet player. So I did want to get to this quickly because I wanted to. I didn't want to ignore the event that I'd made up myself called Spring Me a Melody. So this is a book for the Spring Me a Melody event, which is when through spring, and pretty much we're at the end of spring now, I was reading books that referenced music or songs. So I definitely wanted to read it then for that reason as well. Don't want to ignore my own event. And then I read Ghost World, which I'll probably only mention in this video. I don't think I'm going to do a special video on it. I was looking forward to reading it because I like the film. And the film is absolutely reflective of this graphic novel. But I had a strange experience with this. Sometimes I found the characters endearing, and I was like, yeah, I get what you mean. And sometimes I found them really irritating, and it just so they are so judgmental. They are the two most judgmental characters in anything I can remember reading. I think that's the point, because they're judgmental because they're outsiders and they don't fit. So everybody's a loser to them. So it's the whole point, really. But it did get a little bit irritating sometimes, and you just thought, oh, shut up. So yeah, it was a funny experience reading that. But I did read Ghost World. And I've read several people are typing. So I heard about this thanks to Willow from Books and Bow, who's always saying some interesting things about books, and their reviews are really interesting. And they said this was like Kafka-esque. So I was like, oh, I'm up for that. I did really enjoy it, but I didn't like the ending. So the ending really spoiled it for me. It was just a little bit sudden. I had to read it again. I had to read the last 20 pages again to think, what just happened? And it just flipped like that really quickly. But most of it, like almost all of it, I really, really enjoyed. So I like the concept of it, and I like the fact it's all written as messages. So it's all they're all chat messages. So you're kind of clearly discovering the plot through their messages, and there's no exposition between that with like just text blocks and that. You all right, Ralph? So yeah, I did enjoy it, but I'd love to know if anyone's read this, whether you thought the ending was a little bit abrupt as well. Quite a unique book, I think. And then to finish off, I just had time to read something for the Historathon, which was the Mary Beard Women and Power. So Mary Beard's quite a well-known classicist, and this is essentially 2 lectures put together. And I really enjoyed it. I think it's really interesting. She's saying something really important about how our ideas about women not really having a voice goes right back to the ancient period, and there are lots of consistent things that make this issue an ongoing one. So yeah, really, really good book. I would recommend it. I just found it secondhand, and because it was her name and because we were doing a Historathon, I was like, I'll get that, and I managed to read it. So that was cool. So that's the complete things I read. I've also been reading the October Country through May. So this is part of my Ray Bradbury deep dive, and I'm only kind of like probably about a third of the way in, but I love it, and I need to make a decision about what my first Ray Bradbury video is on this deep dive, whether it's going to be 3 books or 4 books. Tell me what you would prefer. But yeah, the October Country, I think it's a great book. And then just a little note about the Brothers Grimm. So I've held this book up before, saying I was going to read all of the Brothers Grimm stories, and I have been reading these as the start of my folklore, fairy tales, folk stories deep dive thing that's going to take me a couple of years. But this is a massive book. It does get on my nerves a bit. I liked it when I first found it, and it was like lovely illustrations and all that sort of stuff. I was like, oh yeah, cool. But I don't really like having it, especially as I've got too many books anyway. Yeah, so some nice illustrations and that. But I found this dinky version of exactly the same thing. So this is complete. And I found this while I was on holiday. So there is a video coming up in about a week's time of my huge book haul. I bought so many books. But I bought this so I could ditch this. So I'm replacing this with this. It's nicer. It's a nicer version. I mean, the writing's tiny, but it's a nicer version, and I can get rid of this then. So that's the plan. So I'm still reading me Grimm stories for the folk tales, fairy tales deep dive thing. And I bought quite a lot of that kind of thing recently in the trip away. So yeah, in about a week's time, you'll find out that for my birthday and for our wedding anniversary, we went to Liverpool, then we went to Manchester, and then we went to York. So there's 27 books mentioned in that video. So yeah, some of them are books I brought with me, but there we go. So now we're in June. So we've got June on the Range, and the Book Trek 2023 has started. So I'm juggling around with those as well as doing a few other things. So there we are. My subs have gone up a lot again, so thank you so much to anyone that subscribed. And there's lots of good stuff coming up on the channel that I know have already been scheduled. And please, if you've just subscribed, please comment on the video so I can see what sort of thing you like, or just have a conversation with you about it and all that sort of stuff. That would be really cool. But yeah. Thanks a lot for watching. Oh.
Paint me a picture